traffic. You see, I just lost my place. Aha! Traffic in Thousand Oaks and its local freeways, the 101 and the 23, have become congested over the last several years. What can you do as a city council member to alleviate that traffic? And specifically, would you back or not back a proposal to have an increase in the sales tax for devoted to transportation for the county? And so that would start with Rashid.
Well, first off, I think portions of the Thousand Oaks Boulevard specific plan, I think they could alleviate traffic. I know there's something in there that says that the turning lane on Thousand Oaks Boulevard between Herbs Road and Conejo School Road, that would be taken out, and we try to make that more walk friendly. That reduces traffic. And of course, we can also do better at providing better public transportation. I don't know if I want to see a sales tax increase for that. I would like to see East County cities get together and consolidate and do a East County Transit Authority similar to Gold Coast Transit in West County. We got to do better at public transit. I mean, I was looking at statistics on the Census Fact Finder, and in Thousand Oaks we have more people walking to work than using public transportation.
Okay. Yes, Dan?
Number one, if you can encourage people to live in Thousand Oaks, that would certainly get them out of the car. The joke I'll make with my wife is, if you lived here, you'd be home. So we have people who stay here as opposed to going to Ventura or the West Valley. If we can encourage them to stay here, that would be helpful. In terms of increasing sales tax, 52% of my income is already going to income taxes, so I would say that'd be the lower part of the food chain. But if we can actually encourage people to do ride sharing, or something I'll refer to as we'll call spread hours, where you encourage businesses to maybe start their hours maybe a little bit earlier to get people off the road, and to be able to maybe stay a little bit later in the day. By spreading the day over a longer period of time, you reduce the traffic throughout Thousand Oaks Boulevard and the surrounding community. So I would say a combination of working with businesses to have their employees do the spread hours, also encourage ride sharing, and then encouraging more people to actually live in Thousand Oaks and work in Thousand Oaks as opposed to having to live here and then go someplace else.
Thousand Oaks, a problem is we're such a beautiful community, but our roads take the contours of the hills and valleys and so forth. We don't have a grid system here, so public transportation is very difficult. When you see the buses running around, you see about 2 or 3 people in them. So that's really not, doesn't work here. We've tried it for a long time. One of the reasons I have reservations about developing housing on Thousand Oaks Boulevard is that Thousand Oaks Boulevard is the most heavily trafficked east-west street in Thousand Oaks, over 28,000 trips a day. If you're going to all of a sudden introduce traffic calming and perhaps cars from another 500-600 houses onto Thousand Oaks Boulevard, the traffic is not going to move. What are people going to do? I guess they're going to try to stay on the freeway longer. Maybe they'll try to get off at Westlake Boulevard. But I really feel that that idea of calming or stopping traffic on Thousand Oaks Boulevard is really going to be a difficult situation and not very good for the city.
Thank you. All right. Let's start with Dan.
You want me to answer that? I didn't get a chance.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I'm sorry. Forgive me.
Yes. The 101 and the 23, it's an enigma to me how it's taken so long to complete that, and the congestion that we faced as citizens of this community. I want to get to a deeper understanding of that and figure out why that has taken so much time and so much money. In addition, I agree with Ed in regards to public transportation. We have a neighborhood layout as opposed to a grid pattern. And I would also add, if we're going to have higher density houses and mixed use facilities in the downtown region, that is going to increase traffic. All this has to be addressed. It's not just simply to try to get more business to the downtown. There has to be an idea to address the higher density and what's already massive congestion in Thousand Oaks Boulevard. So that would be a priority. Thank you.
Thank you. And another new question, and this was started with Dan. The Thousand Oaks Boulevard's specific plan was recently approved by the City Council. do you support that plan, and specifically the idea of mixed usage, combination of living apartments with businesses?
Yeah, I'm supportive of the Thousand Oaks Boulevard specific plan, primarily because it was 15 years in the making by a combination of community leaders, staff, and property owners. So this just didn't happen overnight. They took the feedback of the community. In terms of mixed use, this concept has been around in the industries for about 400 years from Europe, so this is not brand new. We're a little bit behind in being able to use mixed use, because if you live downtown and you don't have to take your car to go to other facilities, that's going to help out on the traffic piece. In terms of business, it can provide another way for business owners to be able to have their customers right across the street or right upstairs, as opposed to more people having to drive to the downtown area. So mixed use can accomplish some of our housing needs for some of the younger folks and also some of our seniors. It will help encourage businesses. And quite frankly, folks, it's going to make it more of a vibrant downtown offering. Right now, my daughter's classic example is, Dad, there's nothing to do. Right? Well, I don't want to make it the Valley at all, but we want to be able to make it a vibrant offering for the downtown for all of us to enjoy.
Thank you.
Am I next?
Yes.
I'd like to take great exception to that. Thousand Oaks Boulevard was never designed to be a downtown, and in my opinion, it never will be. As I say, I was on the master plan committee. It was the barbell concept. The two bells are the Jan's Mall and the Oaks Mall, where people congregate, and then on the other end where you have the balls in Westlake Village. That is a narrow strip of retail along Thousand Oaks Boulevard. The types of uses that are there, which will probably be there for a long time, involve automotive uses, massage parlors, you know, places where you can go to pick up items that you need for your home. You don't have a strolling vista type thing. If this were Higuera Street in San Luis Obispo, or if this were in the downtown Santa Barbara, I'm trying to think of the name of the street, that would be different. But we don't have that, and we're not going to have, you can't stroll and find beautiful little shops and boutiques and so forth. And those people that are in those stores, and you don't have parallel streets with retail, you don't have cross streets, you have long blocks. I think it's a dream right now. I don't like it.
Yes.
In regards to a European design for the downtown that Europe's been doing for over 400 years, here we're trying to do the bullet train, try to match Europe with rail systems. They're bankrupt, they're struggling. If you've ever been to Europe, it's congestion, those streets are miserable to travel on. That's not America. When we look at downtown, high density, multi-use facilities, and saying that it has community support, that's not what I'm experiencing as I'm walking the precincts. The citizens are upset and they feel as though this has been rammed down their throats and it needs to be addressed.
Okay. Rashid.
Well, I'm supportive of the Boulevard specific plan with reservations, no blank check. That's what I told the association when they interviewed me. I said no blank check for this. We do need mixed use because, as I said before, we need workforce and senior housing. And for seniors, mixed use works because they can walk to shops and whatever they need and not have to drive or, you know, use public transport. They are able to walk in. And of course, the area has to be safe, so we have to keep up our public safety spending to support such a plan. But I think mixed use will work for this area. Like Board Member Jones says, it's not going to be like State Street or anything like that. But so we have to find out how to make a downtown work for Thousand Oaks, not try to emulate any other city. We've got to be individuals.
Okay, thank you. Let me skip Ed to start this round because he's already done twice. We start with
You can start with me if you get it.
I'll start with Pastor McCoy. Thousand Oaks approved its Vision 2064, a 50-year strategic outline for the future. What do you believe needs that may be missing in this plan, and what's your assessment of it?
One of the things that was evident to me is there needs to be a greater focus on the fastest growing segment of our community, and that's our senior citizens. We're an aging community, and housing for senior citizens needs to be addressed. The idea that we want to remove some of these manufactured home areas for development is unconscionable. We have a commitment to our senior citizens in this community, and we want to protect oak trees, but why would we, in the same swipe, remove or uproot our senior citizens in their housing? So that needs to be addressed in the plan that the city faces. Absolutely.
Thank you. So after Ron, it would be Chase.
Okay, well, I participated in the final session of the visioning process. I thought it was a good process to get the public involved, but at the same time, I thought some of the goals that we were given to vote on, I thought there was a lot of redundancy there. And at the end, seniors were left out, and I've heard from seniors I talked to everywhere, they feel like they were left out of the goals, the visioning process. They feel like they're left out of the goals of the city overall. The median age in Thousand Oaks is 41, so the community is aging. Seniors have to be focused on. And also, I think another goal is to prevent urban decay, which is why I support the Boulevard-specific plan, because it could help mitigate urban decay. This isn't on the Boulevard, this is off of Hampshire Road. You have the former Kmart site, been vacant almost 11 years, just sitting there rotting, going into urban decay.
Thank you.
What was the question again?
The question is, remind the question is, the Vision 64 50-year strategic plan that was approved, how would you evaluate that? Is there anything missing?
Well, I think that was a good attempt. I mean, I'm always in favor of getting the community involved. As Rob mentioned earlier, you know, we're doing canvassing, we pick up a lot of ideas that way from the public. And so I think that's always a beneficial thing to do. I don't like the fact that in recent years, they've narrowed the scope of the people that they're questioning. We used to do a broader field. I understand that through laws of predictability, you can, you know, spread out from a small group. But I think if they had, for instance, had more participation with their questionnaire, give it to a broader field, they would have found out things like the fact that putting housing on Thousand Oaks Boulevard is not a very good idea in a lot of people's minds, and that they would have gotten the idea that we need to protect our oak trees. After all, this is Thousand Oaks. We voted to have the name Thousand Oaks as opposed to the name Conejo Valley. I think being here means that you have a certain amount of respect for the oaks, and we ought to save them.
All right. Thank you. This question would then start.
I'd like to comment on that question. I participated in the Visioning 2064 project. I attended all the classes over a 6-month period of time. And at the final session, when they pulled all the statistics together, I sat there with senior friends of mine, and they had their top 10 list, almost like a Johnny Carson top 10 list. And would you believe that under the top 10 goals of this entire process, the word senior didn't exist anywhere? Nowhere. Not senior housing, not senior anything. So one of the things that I'd like to be able to see in our vision going forward is that we recognize that by the time 2020 comes around, 50% of our population will be age 55 and older. So not only do we have an issue now with seniors in housing, imagine the demographics over the next 20 years. I'm 55 years old. I will not have the same housing needs 20 years from now. So it's flawed, and I think it left out seniors.
Okay, thank you. This question would then start with Chase Rashid. Several questions have come up from the audience with regard to the fact that the city council does grant millions of dollars every year in a variety of ways, assist for nonprofit organizations, but also private corporations. What would be your criteria as to whether the city should give any special grant money or in any way, for instance, forgiving taxes, etc.? What would be the criteria that you would employ as to whether the city ought to give that money?
Are you asking me?
No, to Rashid.
Oh.
Sorry.
Well, first off, as far as corporations go, private business, that'd be a no. Straight out, that would be a no. I'm not for giveaways like that. I oppose the auto mall giveaway. I put a letter in the Acorn about how I thought that was just ridiculous that the auto mall was given a no money down loan, which is something that a sensible bank would never do. So why should a city do that with taxpayer dollars? And as far as the nonprofits go, I really don't want to cut them off, but I do want to make sure that our money is spent well and that nonprofits have specific plans that will result in positive change in our community and changes that have been tested before through their programs. So if nonprofits want city money, they should demonstrate that they can get results.
Thank you, Dan.
I think the goal of city government and most governments is to provide essential services. The government is not in the business of helping everyone all the time. Because if you think about this, there's a certain pot of money that has to be divided. So as a city council member, if you take money from one organization or not, I guarantee your name's going to be in the newspaper. The goal here is, does it fall into the category of essential services? Well, how do you define that? Part of the goal setting for the city council is to determine, is this an essential service or not? Some would say, well, the arts is not an essential service. Well, there's an argument there. More community involvement in the goal setting, not just having council members come up with their top 10 ideas for the next 10 years. It's community involvement in determining what those goals are. So their goals are actually your goals in defining essential services.
Okay. So Pete, back to you, Ed.
Yes, I agree with what Chase said. I'm not in favor of giving public money to private enterprise. I don't understand, people in private enterprise always say, the government would just get off our backs, just leave us alone. It'd be great, but then they want money. Cars companies want to be bailed out, the banks had. I don't understand why the car dealers, don't they have an association? Didn't they realize that they've overbuilt that area and that they're going to run out of parking? Why didn't they put some money in a fund starting many years ago to build a parking structure? I don't understand why they have to come to government to get money. I would have thought that, some of those car dealers are quite wealthy people. I happen to know a couple. Let them spend their own money. Let them build a parking structure. I don't think it's right to spend our public money on that enterprise.
My turn?
Yes.
In the rare exception where the return on investment is worth it for the city to invest with a business, I could see that happening. But in this case where the city puts up half of its share of the money and then the other half that the car dealerships are to put up is also the city's money that they loan to them, that's a sweetheart deal that I'm not in favor of. I think all of us would love to have received that from our parents, but that's not the case. And I just don't see the return on investment in relation to this. I think it was bad planning, and they're putting it on the backs of the citizens. It doesn't work.
Dan, starting, there are huge challenges facing the budget of the city of Thousand Oaks. If you are elected to the council, I want to get at your priorities. Let's assume there was a sudden windfall of an additional 10% of revenues that came in. What would be top of your list, how you would spend that money? And let's make the opposite assumption that there's a 10% increase in cost. What would be the first thing you would cut? So what's the first thing if you had the money, you would spend it on? What's the first thing, if you didn't have the money, you would cut?
Right. I'll give you a specific example. I'm president of a homeowners association. And one of the things that we're required to do every year is have a reserve audit. It determines the amount of money that should be set aside for those things which are going to become obsolete in a few years. So if we have this windfall of an additional 10%, what we've got to ask ourselves, do we have the money to repair some of these things, like roads, over the next 10 years, and put that money away towards a reserve? I'm not calling it rainy day money. I'm specifically allocating it to the things that fall into this category of essential services. So we get the money that comes in, doesn't mean we go out and spend it. Now, if we had to reduce things for an extra 10% reduction, we have to go back to the question is, what's the role of government? Providing essential services. That's going to be police, fire, roads, sometimes in the area of healthcare for seniors. We've got to be able to look at our essential services list, which gets back to goal setting and the community involvement. So it shouldn't be one person or 5 people determining what you want. It's more community involvement. Your voice should be heard, not just 5 people.
Okay.
And
Yeah, if you get a windfall of money, you should spend it only on a capital program. In other words, something that will not be a recurring expense. Because if you have a recurring expense, then you develop the need for that much money every year. So I would be in favor of looking at what capital projects might need to be done and spend the money in that way. But what you need to do with whatever amount of money, you know, we talk about how we're going to get along, we're broke, da-da-da. We have all these car dealers. How many cities have one of the largest car dealers in the country that we have here? We ought to be able to learn how to live within our means, and that means rationing. You know, we can't give to every group that comes before the council. We ought to give to some nonprofits, but we can't give to all of them. We need to have a schedule for road overlays. We need to live within our means, and since we have this our revenue that most cities don't have, there's no reason why we can't do that.
Okay, thank you. Ron?
I think it was Ronald Reagan who said the closest thing to eternal life on this earth is a government job. And the last thing that we would want to do with a windfall is to put it towards pensions and employee costs. I'm in agreement with Ed that it would have to go to items in the community that would have a long-lasting effects, infrastructure, capital, which would be necessary for the community. That's what we pay for, and that's what we deserve as citizens. If we had to cut spending, there are no sacred cows in the city government. Everything needs to be looked at. When we see a doubling in our police and fire, and every other budgetary item has been cut, we still have to look at police and fire. We make this the safest city in the country, but in the same regard, we have to see why has that cost doubled? Do we have twice as many officers, twice as many firefighters? We don't, so why is it doubled? Those questions have to be asked and have to be addressed. So that's where I look.
Thank you. Jake?
Okay, so out of all the candidates, I think I've been the most fiscally conservative and strict with my ideas for the city, which a lot of people would not expect since I'm a Democrat and we're supposed to be big spenders, but that's just how that goes. But if we had an extra 10%, we definitely should not just spend it mindlessly. I would say a rainy day fund. But if there were specific needs that we had to take care of, we should take care of those needs. And if cuts had to be made, I'm absolutely not going to support cuts to public safety. In the UK, the Home Minister, Theresa May, she thought it'd be a great idea to cut 14,000 police officers. Crime went way up, so that obviously didn't work. So I want to look at upper level salaries. This is the budget.